We've done our homework and we figured out the worst and best secrets of Strixhaven commanders, so we're going to go through every single one of them from worst to best.
I'm Mia, and I'm still in the middle of Persona 3.
I'm BZ. We just played A10 Slay the Spire 2 multiplayer, and we beat it without saving. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you're thinking that any of these commanders look really cool, or you want to jumpstart a new deck with them, I think, let's just say this. These commanders spark a lot more inspiration than some stuff from recent sets, so I wouldn't blame you. If you want to do that, Card Kingdom's got all of the best prices and all of the best things and all of the best selections, which means you can get them all in the same package sent to your house with great customer service.
We also have a Patreon. Thank you guys so much for being a patron. If you want to learn more or give Amber or Miso a treat, check out our link in the description below.
There are 36 commanders in this set. We're going to go through every single one of them. We're going to start with the worst because that's more fun and get into gradually better and better. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about what this deck would look like if you built it, some of the pros, some of the cons, and we're just going to have fun with it.
The first one that we're going to be talking about is the worst, and it is the Dawning Archaic, 10 mana for a 7/7, but you won't be paying that because the spell costs 1 less for each instant and sorcery in your graveyard. It has reach, and whenever it attacks, you can cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If it would be put back into your graveyard, exile it instead. I thought this was a very cool line of text on a commander, but then I realized he was colorless, so we had to look at all of the colorless instant and sorceries that we have, and there's not a lot.
Yeah, this is a really good card that is almost non-functional in Commander. There are only 25 possible instants and sorceries that you could play that are colorless, and most of them are on the line of like Expanded Anatomy, where they barely do anything and you're going to have to maybe discard them or mill them, and you just never ever want to cast them. But there are also some good ones, like I would love to cast Rise of the Eldrazi with this thing. This is just a really strong card that has nothing to do because you're colorless.
Yeah, I was thinking about the old BZ staple Warping Whale. What about that one?
Look, Warping Whale's in this deck for sure. There's a couple good ones. There's a handful of like colorless pip cards from the MH3 Eldrazi precon. But I don't think there's enough to make this a real deck at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was trying to think of all the ones that I could think of, and some of the best ones I was thinking of was like environmental sciences, and that's not hitting very well.
Like, you're welcome to try. This is a cool, like, if I sat across from the Dawning Archaic, I'd be like, that's sick, dude. But you're going to be held back a fair bit. Maybe in like 3 years or something. If we can get like 10 more good ones, we can put something together. But for now, it's a good card, but I don't think it'll play good. You're never going to get too much reduction on it, so you're going to pay like 5 mana for this thing most of the time. Number 35, we have Kyril, history buff, white-red for a 2/3. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, Kyril becomes prepared, which means you're allowed to cast the spell on the right side. In this case, it's Pack-a-Punch, 1 red-white sorcery, mill card, put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature, and it gains trample until end of turn. I do like the cycle of legends that can become prepared over and over and cast the spell, but this one, you got to jump through a little bit of a hoop to get it. What do you get? You get 2 counters? That's just so little. I don't even know what this deck would really look like.
I think this one is pretty rough because you're not in like the graveyard recursion colors. I know that Boros is trying to do that in Strixhaven, but it's not like it has a ton of support out for it outside of the set and outside of other Strixhaven too. This one is a little bit rough because you are like lion sashing your like graveyard away and all of that, and you're not getting that much benefit for it. And then your benefit to having it prepared is casting a 3 mana mill 1 counter trample. That is just a lot of effort to go through, especially since we have things like Lorehold Charm, where if you want to give things trample on your team, you can do it for a much better rate.
Yeah, and we're going to have this package, like you said, of Lion Sash, and there's like Relic of Progenitus also maybe works, where you need to repeatedly exile cards so that you can prepare Kyril, but then you also need to have creatures that care about having counters on them. So I don't know if you want to go like the Walking Ballista route or the like Double Striker route, but either way, it just seems like pretty underpowered.
Number 34 is yet another prepared creature. It's Abigail, Poet Laureate. 1 white-black for a 2/3 with flying. Whenever you cast a creature spell, Abigail becomes prepared. Its prepared side is Heroic Stanza, 1 or in a white-black hybrid for a sorcery. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature. It is easy to be able to cast a bunch of creature spells to make it prepared, but I feel like that payoff of just 2 mana, put a counter on a creature is not that good, especially at sorcery speed.
Yeah, sorry to the Abigail fans out there, but we kind of already covered most of this with Kyril. This is way easier to prepare, but the payout you get is actually even lower. I will say this is like one of the best arts in the set. Really, really sweet. And somehow beating out 3 commanders in the set, we have number 33. You probably expected it as dead last, but it's Page, Loose Leaf, 2 mana for a 0/2. It taps for a colorless. And I'm going to read this ability, but you can basically just ignore it because it has Grandeur. Discard another card named Page. Reveal cards until you hit an instant or sorcery. Put it into your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. Grandeur is literally useless. We cannot possibly take advantage of it. Maybe there's some weird way to do it with like things on the stack, but essentially useless. It has no extra text, but it's a 2-mana creature that you knowingly will always have on turn 2, and it taps for colorless, so it will ramp you. And I think at least what this has above the other 3, which are non-functional or very, very bad, is you could just build a really greedy deck relying on the fact that you always have 2-mana acceleration. You could cut every Mind Stone from your deck and just play a bunch of 4-drops. That's one way to go, but like that's still pretty bad.
We were arguing about this for a little bit because it was like, is this the worst? We definitely had it worst in the beginning, but then we started reading these prepared creatures and we're like, well, when would we actually play any of this? And we decided that I guess 2-mana acceleration is better than anything else that anyone was doing at the bottom.
I think if someone pulled out a page deck, I would be very intrigued, and I think you could do stuff with it. Like, you know that this card has no text on it. I'm never going to kill it. You know that it's going to survive to turn 3 every time. So maybe you just play the like 34 drops deck with page in it, but we'll just move on. That's a pipe dream. Number 32 is Ennis, Debate Moderator. 1 and a white for a 1/1. When it enters, you exile up to 1 other target creature you control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. And at the beginning of your end step, if 1 or more cards are put into exile this turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on Ennis. This is like, I mean, it's an uncommon, so I'm not expecting much, but it's very by the numbers. You could build a flicker deck onto this, but I don't know why you would choose this over any of the other options.
This is so fine. It just only flickers once, though, and that makes it a little bit rough. If you're going for a budget flicker, why wouldn't you go like Abdel Adrian and like the white?
There's like Preston.
Yeah, there's so many other ones, even if you're going in the more budget route, that are better than this one.
It is cool. It's worth noting if you're an Ennis fan. If you like Swords to Plowshares, somebody else's creature, that will satisfy the last mode of putting a counter on them at the end step. But that's not enough. We have a 1/1. This thing needs to get like 3 counters or something for me to start considering that. What's our next number?
Our next one is 31, and it is Emil, Vastlands Roamer, 2 and a green for a 3/3. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have trample. If you pay 4 and a green and tap them, you create a 0/0 fractal. You put X1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of differently named lands you control. That part is kind of cool because it is pretty easy to have a lot of differently named lands, especially if you're me.
Field of the Dead?
Yes, Field of the Dead, mana base, of course. That's every mana base. But I don't think that like ability is very overwhelming. Having creatures with trample on them is nice, but I don't know why you would pick this as your commander when there are better 1/1 commanders, 1/1 counter commanders, and then also this is a very expensive ability.
I think this commander's like in the right space. You know, it's an uncommon, so it can only be so strong. But I love the idea of paying off differently named lands. They did a little bit of that with like commons in Edge of Eternities. But like, I just don't know when we're going to activate it. I don't really want to pay 5 mana for a 7/7 or something.
Yeah.
Like, it does have trample and you can do it on end step. It's just like almost there. I don't think it's enough for me. Number 30, Orisa, tied Choreographer, 4 and a blue for a 2/2, but not really because it costs 3 less to cast if creatures you control have total toughness 10 or greater. And when Orisa enters, you draw 2 cards. So we've got a Mull Drifter without flying, but if you've got a board state already, it's only 2 mana.
I mean, this is so fine. You want to be able to put this in a flicker deck. There are good blue flicker cards, but is your best payoff of flickering your commander the thing that you will always have in your command zone, drawing 2 cards? We have cards that just do that in general.
Yeah, 10 toughness, it's a lot for a blue deck too. I mean, you're obviously a flicker deck, so you're going to be putting stuff on the board, but you know, sometimes you've got like, you know, the 3 mana 2/1 that bounces a permanent, like that's only got 1 toughness. And sometimes it's just kind of weird. I think Orisa's cool, but I don't really, there's not enough. It's not like, oh my God, this is a crazy deck. It's an okay, solid little draw spell. But then I just would question why she's in your command zone over any other solid little draw spell. But I wouldn't question if you pull out Mythic Tools and you say, hey, my commander's Orisa. Check out my cool little banner. And I go, whoa, how did you get that? Mythic Tools is a great app. That's how they say. That's what they would answer with.
Mythic Tools is great because you're able to check out everyone's lists on your friend group. If you have a friend group and you want to check out anything like collections or you want to check out deck lists, you are able to do that and trade information very easily and just friend everyone that you play with. Mythic Tools. Go download it right now using our link.
Yeah, I love that you can either use it as a solid workhorse life app, or you can get really fancy with it. Just check it out. There's a bunch to do.
Number 29 has a very similar line of text than one of the commanders that we just previously talked about. It's Neve, the Practical Dean, 2 and a green for a 2/2. Creatures you control with counters on them have trample.
Wow.
Whenever you cast your first spell with X in his mana cost each turn, put X1/1 counters on him. This is a little bit better because it doesn't specify 1/1 counters. It is just any counters have trample, and it makes him a little bit bigger so you are able to get that combat damage on your commander. But are we really doing Voltron Voltron, especially in green in the year of 2026. I feel like it's a little bit fragile.
Yeah, I do like that it has synergy with stuff like Court of Calling. If you can get these X spells off on other people's turns, Neve can get more and more counters. I don't know if Neve himself is the win con. Maybe it's just a nice supplement where, with email, it's like I got a 3/3, but Neve is maybe like a 10/10. That is going to make him a target for removal. Yet another option if you really, really, really want your creatures with +1/+1 counters to have trample. At least he throws some beatdowns. Number 28, Augusta, Order Returned. 2 and a white for a 1/3 flying vigilance. Whenever she attacks, each player exiles a card from their graveyard. When one or more non-land cards are exiled this way, put that many +1/+1 counters on target attacking creature. I want to like this more, but you can't expect to get 4 counters at a time, which is kind of rough, even if your opponents all have a bunch of cards in their graveyard because they choose what they exile. So they can just exile a land if they want to.
Yeah, and it's a little bit rough because you have to attack with this, and if you don't want the counters on this, you have to attack with another creature too. So you always have to be attacking with it. It's a little bit slow in that regard, and everyone also has to have stuff in their graveyard. I feel like if you are not just like a turbo mill deck, especially in white, which might be a little bit tougher unless you have the pieces like Mesmeric Orb or anything like that, it might be tough to make your opponents have all of the pieces that you need.
That's just the problem. Like, you can't mill them too much because when you Mesmeric Orb and they have 10 cards in their graveyard, you're never going to get any counters because they always have a land. Even fetch lands and stuff, Remiri Landscapes can go in and like block you. You could go with like the shadow creature route, like Soltari, I don't know, Trooper, I think is one. There's like 3 or 4 that have shadow that are unblockable, kind of do like a Changeling Outcast impression. Or you can go like the Walking Ballista, maybe. At least you know that whenever Augusta attacks, as long as you have an non-land card to exile, you can get at least 1 counter. Maybe you can even do some political things now that I'm thinking about it, where if you say, hey, other 3 players, I'm going to attack this person. Give me the counters and I'll leave you alone for a second.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like this isn't the most exciting thing to do, though. I do like being able to get rid of stuff in other people's graveyards. I do think that's a good ability, but I feel like if this was, Orzhov instead of just plain white, I think it would be a lot more of a substantial game plan.
Yeah, you don't have a lot to work with, like color pie-wise. Number 27 is Tam, Observant Sequencer, another one of our students with Prepared. 2 green-blue for a 4/3 with Landfall. Whenever a land enters, she becomes prepared. Now, this is a really easy creature to prepare. The spell is Deep Sight, green-blue for a sorcery. You draw a card and you gain 1 life. So maybe not the most exciting card after you read the whole thing, because it's like, well, isn't this just worse Tatiova? But there are some upsides of Tam. This lets you cast a lot of sorceries, like as many sorceries as you could possibly want, which is pretty cool. You could maybe mix in some Magecraft, like Archmage Emeritus and some others. There's a bunch of other ones. I won't name them all, but that's kind of a cool twist on like the basic Tatiova deck.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think that with the ability being green and blue, it's a little bit hard because you can't reduce it with any of the other stuff that, usually Spellslinger decks like to mix in. But being able to have it prepared so often might give it an advantage, especially if your games go on long.
It is kind of cool. Like the first thing I think of is, it's kind of a bummer that if I have 3 lands enter at the same time, they'll have 3 triggers for her to become prepared, but you can't stack it. So she'll only ever be prepared once, and you kind of miss out on 2 deep sights. But if you give your sorceries flash, then you could kind of do it multiple times because you have 3 prepared triggers, with your 3 lands you put in. You pay the blue-green, then cool. Then the next prepared trigger resolves because you cast the first one instant speed, and you just keep preparing her, and you cast the spell. There's some stuff there. I like it.
Number 26 is another one that cares about X spells. It's Jadzi, Steward of Fate. 2 and a blue for a 2/3, and it enters prepared. When it enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. And on the other side is Oracle's Gift, XX blue for a sorcery. Create X00 green and blue fractal creatures, then put X11 counters on each fractal you control. I like that scales, and I like that you're able to kind of loot with it very cheaply, but you are probably going to be putting this in a flicker deck, and I don't know if that's the best thing you can do yet again.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is like, I can't re-prepare it, which would incentivize me to flicker it to re-prepare it. And that's cool because she has an ETB, so that kind of fits together. It's just that the spell side is like pretty underwhelming. Are you trying to generate a bunch of mana? Maybe you could try to go off with High Tide and untapping. That's not exactly a new archetype, but she does give you an outlet for all of that if you just want to turn a bunch of busted mana production into like 5 fractals.
Yeah, is that the best thing we can do with High Tide nowadays?
I'm turning $100,000 into $10,000.
Oh, joy. That's what I'm excited about.
Moving into number 25, it's one of the pre-con alternate commanders. We got Scriv, the Obligator. That's a fun name. 2 white-black for a 2/3 flying death touch. Whenever Scriv enters or attacks, you create a white aura enchantment token named Contract attached to target creature and opponent controls, which I like. But the part that I don't like so much is the token has enchant creature, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn if it's attacking one of your opponents. Otherwise, its controller loses 2 life. I love everything that's going on. I love the fact that you're giving contracts and you can make deals, but then they make the actual aura do nothing.
Yeah.
It's like inconsequential whether they attack them or you. It's like doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I don't really care about 2 life, especially I'm like thinking about the trade, right? If I'm going to swing at you for 10 and in response like I lose 2 because of this, I'll just go, okay, I'll swing at you for 10 if I want to kill you, and I'll swing at them for 12 if not.
But 2 life is never going to dissuade me from hitting you if you're the threat.
Yeah.
It's not even close. Like it would have to be discarding cards, or maybe they draw cards or something, or a life, maybe like they lose 3, you gain 3. I just don't know. And then +2/+0, it's like, oh boy, let's really stick it to the arch enemy. Extra 2 damage.
Yeah, I feel like life total doesn't matter that much. You know how many turns that I have had in Commander where I have dinged myself for 4 on Snuff Out, given people life with Solitude, and I went, that was a pretty good turn. A lot of them have happened.
Yeah, I love the idea of Scriv. I think you can definitely do a cool political deck, but it will be carried by the other political cards. And this is basically just vibes.
Number 24 is one of the better prepared creatures. It's Sonar, Unfinished Genius. Blue-red for a 0/4 enters prepared. You tap it to create a treasure token. Activate only if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. And on its other side, it is Wild Idea, 3 blue-red for a sorcery. Search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. I like that you can make a treasure token and it doesn't really matter if it's prepared. You can just keep making that over and over. And the other one's a tutor. It's an expensive tutor, but tutor's one of the better things we've seen on these prepared creatures.
Yeah, I like that it's just a better, basically a better mana dork. The mana sticks around if you don't need it that turn. But this to me seems like one of the perfect secret commanders, because you can take any signature spell that you want to cast every single game. Maybe it's one of the new paradigm cards. Maybe this was by design. I don't know. But you get the cost reduces in, you pay 3 or 4 for Wild Idea. Go find whatever your real commander is, and you can do that with reasonable consistency. And Saynar is just like a solid little blocker that'll generate some mana. I think this is cool.
Yeah, he'll stick around for a while, go under the radar, and I feel like you can make a lot of mana out of this.
Seems pretty cool. Number 23, it's another, maybe the last prepared creature. We got Lewin, Exchange Student. 2 green-black for a 3/4, enters prepared. You can exile a creature card from your graveyard, which doesn't have a mana cost associated with it, to have Lewin become prepared and activate only as a sorcery. And the spell is Pest Friend. Black-green hybrids, only 1 mana for a sorcery. It creates a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, whenever this token attacks, you gain 1 life. Let me just first say, I cannot stand it for seemingly no reason. The pest tokens now just gain life when they attack and not when they die. It is so confusing and I don't like it. But all that aside, this is a really efficient way to prepare, unprepare, put spells on the stack. It's kind of basically just, it says pay green or black, pay 1 mana, exile something from your graveyard, make a 1/1. That's pretty cool.
This is what Green-Black wants to do to begin with. It feels like it's within the color pie where you have a lot of supplemental pieces to be able to do the thing that you want to do. I feel like when you are rocking with, Curel or the Boros guy, it's like, okay, I have to jump through so many hoops to get this. But this is what I want to do. I want things that, will gain me life or make some tokens or things leaving my graveyard. And this is pretty easy to do.
Yeah, sweet. I think Sedgemoor Witch, Professor Onyx, the Magecraft cards you could really get goofy with and turn this into kind of a green-black storm deck now that you have a bunch of spells in your command zone every time. I think that's a new space, and I'm interested to see. This is a pretty cool one. It's just a decent little token generator, too, so you can go that route. You can play overruns. There's a lot to do. Lewin's pretty cool.
Number 22 helps those pests that BZ loves so much. It's Black Loafing Pest, 1 black-green for a 3/4. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on each pest, bat, insect, snake, and spider you control. That's going to be an easy one to keep track of.
Yeah, we're combining that life gain with, I don't even know what you call this, creepy, crawly kindred, maybe? That's kind of hard to say. That's the new name. Patent it. It's pretty cool. Like, you're going to want a bunch of Essence Wardens and, like, the new one that's like a 2-mana 2/2 from this set that gain life when you play stuff. And then you could do, like, oh, I'm going to play Spider Spawning and get a bunch of spiders. That's going to put, like, 30 counters on my team. That's a cool way to win. And I guess if you want to get combo-y, you could do things with, like, Maskwood Nexus and Basking Broodscale. But if that's your main draw, let me just tell you, Basking Broodscale combos with like every other card. You don't need to play this one.
Oh no, we broke Basking Broodscale and Maskwood Nexus. That's crazy.
We did it. Yeah, don't really like that's maybe one competitive way you could tilt the deck, but I would just try to go like Essence Warden, make a bunch of tokens, overrun, and then you got a solid little deck there.
Also, Blex is dead.
Blex is dead. Sadly, he passed away off screen. Blex, we're going to miss you, buddy. But we now have Blech. Number 21, Nita, Forum Conciliator. 1 white-black for a 2/3. Let me tell you, this set, They love 2/3s in this set. There's so many. Whenever you cast a spell you don't own, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. 2, sacrifice another creature, exile an instant or sorcery from an opponent's graveyard. You can cast it, and you can spend rainbow mana on it, and then blah, 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 it gets exiled. It's like all the words you'd expect to see, but it's 55 words long. There needs to be a way to shorten that. But this is kind of a cool spin on this. It's in Orzhov now. You want to maybe mill them or something, or discard, and then take the stuff. The only thing is, you can get a lot of value out of that first line, but if you want to keep using the second line, it's really mana intensive.
Yeah, and I think the thing that BZ glazed over and the blah, blah, blah that I didn't mention is that it's only sorcery speed also, which I think is pretty rough on the card. I think that having this up to be able to, react to something would be really nice. Maybe if you had, like a counter spell in someone's graveyard, that would be a really awesome way to spin this. But keeping it at sorcery speed is why it's so low, or one of the reasons why it's so low on our list.
Yeah, it's a cool commander. I think you're going to get a lot of counters. It's just don't expect to use the second mode a lot. Like that first part is probably most of the card, because there's plenty of ways to steal their things and cast their stuff from exile, which I like. Black can do that a fair bit. There's a lot of Thunder Junction stuff with that. And now this commander is a good way to, sprinkle some white cards in there.
Number 20 is yet another Quandrix card. It's Primo, the Unbounded. X green, green, blue for a 0/0 with trample. It enters with twice X +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever one or more creatures you control with base power 0 deal combat damage to a player, create a fractal, put a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the damage dealt. This is going to be really big, and it's going to be a pretty big creature, and at least it has trample, so it has some evasion.
Yeah, it's mostly a big bundle of stats. You could maybe put a lot of ramp in here because you're green, and then have this be one of your main payoffs. Notably, it's got the wording where if I hit 3 opponents, each with 1/5/5, I will get a 15/15 fractal. It's kind of like that one trample card from Ikoria.
Yeah.
Like the Quartzwood Crasher, I think. It's like kind of like got that vibe to it, but it's your commander. So there's some cool stuff you want to maybe sneak through. There's like Saz's Chocobo has 0 power. Incubation Druid has 0 power and really wants a counter on it. District Mascot. Notably, you can't just play Ornithopter. You have to put counters on it because a 0 power creature won't deal damage. It has to be 0 base power with additional power somehow.
This is a lot of hoops to jump through, but if you want to see any decks that are making with Primo, you should check out moxfield.com, the best place that everyone is building decks on.
Yeah, if you're super into Primo, go search it in the bar. You can explore decks, you can explore brewers, but in this case, just search Primo. You can filter by views, you can filter by likes, whatever you want to do to figure out which Primo deck is your baseline. Then you can start from there. You can duplicate it. Moxfield just lets you do everything, and it makes it so easy to build decks that it's a shame you're not building one right now.
Number 19 is one of the face commanders of the precons. It's Killian, Decisive Mentor, 1 white black for a 2/3. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, tap up to 1 target creature and goad it. Whenever 1 or more creatures that are enchanted by an aura you control attack, draw a card. This is awesome because you're able to put bad enchantments and auras onto other people's stuff and put the good ones on yours, and then still profit off both of them.
Yeah, the goading is really sweet. You don't have to goad what you're enchanting. There's so much room for political nonsense, and I want to separate the face commanders here from the precon. I'm not going to assume you have the precon. I'm going to assume you have this commander and you want to build a deck from it. So it's not like, oh, this Killian deck has bad finishers. No, it doesn't. This is just, we're talking about Killian only. I think this deck wants a bunch of like Nurgle's Rots, Spirit Loop, cheap, dumb artifact or enchantments that keep coming down, keep goading things. Maybe you're flickering. I really like Cleansing Meditation. I'm going to keep singing the praises of that one because you destroy everything, and then as long as you have Threshold, all your enchantments come back and you go to basically everything in play. Build your own Disrupt Decorum.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I do like how they're making auras, not just good stuff too, but bad stuff over the last few years when we've had like Wilds of Eldraine and all of the bad stuff that you can put on people's things.
Yeah,
I think it's super spicy. Ghoulish Impetus and stuff. I like this archetype a lot.
Yeah, this feels like a pretty decent version of this. Usually they give us, cobbled together black-white politics, but this commander has a lot of going on, and you just need to figure out how to win. There's plenty of ways to do that. I mean, you can go watch our precon video if you really want to start with that deck and then figure out how to win from there. You can also go like the mill route. You can try to replenish to get all your things. Anything that's making a bunch of enchantments enter at the same time has got to be good for you. We're officially at our halfway point of commanders. We got Mika, Reader of Ruin, 3 and a red for a 4/4 ward. Pay 3 life. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you can sacrifice an artifact, and if you do, you copy the spell. And of course, you get new targets as usual. This is like mono red kind of copying. It's really weird. It's like a beefy 4/4. I think it's a human or an orc or something. Kind of a beefcake.
And it's pretty easy to make tokens and just spit a bunch of stuff out. And with artifacts, you're able to get those. I mean, red's ramp is usually artifacts to begin with or rituals, but you're probably going to be going artifacts obviously with this. So you're able to just kind of turbo out all that stuff and copy a bunch of new things.
Yeah, get all your treasures, get your unexpected windfalls, get your big scores, get the 3-mana ones, seize the spoils that I couldn't think of for a second. I think this seems pretty easy and can go kind of big in the late game, so pretty good for an uncommon, honestly. Brass's Bounty is like your super top end. That gives you artifacts for days. Fury Gale Flocking was in the precon for Prismari, but it's really, really good on this guy. You're going to get, 12 3/3 flyers with haste out of that?
I want to also be using Rain of Riches and stuff, so maybe you can cascade and you also come in with a couple treasures. It seems pretty cool. Number 17 is one of the Elder Dragons. It's Quandrix the Proof, 4 blue-green for a 6/6 with Flying, Trample, Cascade. Instants and sorceries you cast from your hand have Cascade. I think that this is just very fair, and you're able to get it down a little bit earlier because you're in the Simic colors, but I feel like it doesn't really help you to win that well.
It's not really, we kind of have the least to say about this card. I have more negative to say about the commanders before it, and I have more positive to say about the commanders after it. This is still a good card, but it's just super fair. I'm not even really sure how you could break this too much because you have to cast the spells from your hand. Maybe if you keep buying something back or getting mana off of it, but it's okay to have a fair card. It's okay to just have a flying 6/6 2-for-1 that basically draws and casts you at least one spell every single turn.
But there's a reason why it's mid through the list at that point, because it's fair but not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I could even see this being one of the least built commanders just because at least some of the other ones ask you to do crazier things and they're more novel.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Number 16 is Excava, the Risen Past, the alternate Boros commander. It's 2 red-white for a 3/3 flying haste. I like those stats. Whenever it attacks, you can return up to 1 artifact, enchantment, or creature, as long as it's not an aura, with mana value 3 or less, and it becomes a 1/1 spirit with a finality counter, and the spirit has flying. There's a lot of value. The haste is huge on this because it means you're probably going to get at least 2 reanimates per Excava lifetime and not just have it sit down and sometimes just die to an edict or something. I like that. I just don't love that I know it's balancing, but I just don't love that the card stays on board and is now susceptible to more removal.
Yeah, you can't just get multiple triggers off it unless you're going that whole extra combat route or something like that. It is cool though. I really like the bringing it back with finality counter. It feels fair, but also the recursion is nice. It feels like a Nixia kind of.
Yeah, and what I mean on the board, I mean as a 1/1. It's more vulnerable as a creature versus if it was just an enchantment. I like Windcrag Siege in this deck. That's super funny because you can get it back if it dies, and it copies the Excava attack trigger, so you get an extra second thing. Or you can go Hardened Archaic. That's a card that I'm not 100% sure how strong it is from the set. It looks like it has a lot of potential, but when cards leave your graveyard, it gets counters, and then you can, if you have a card that you don't feel like casting, you can just discard it and save 3 mana.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for this is going to be getting those cards into your graveyard in Boros.
Yes, but I think that's what Hardened Archaic is definitely going to help with. Also, Mesmeric Orb, what a card. If that card ever gets reprinted, we're going to have to buy 5 of them because we just keep
We just need them.
It comes up so often in so many colors. Number 15, what do we got?
We have Prismari, the Inspiration, 5 blue-red for a 7/7 with flying with ward, pay 5 life. That is a chunky ward. Instants and sorcery spells you cast have Storm. I think that this is pretty susceptible to just kind of disruption. We see this with the Storm card, like the Lady Storm.
Yeah, Force of Nature.
And this is cool and all, but you're paying a ton of mana to get this down, and then you probably don't have a ton of mana afterwards to be able to cast all the spells that you want.
And even if you can cast one spell after Prismari, what is it? Your Storm's 2, your Storm's 1, you get an extra copy. This is a very flashy, powerful card. If you untap with it, you will probably win, but the ward is maybe the weakest part of this card. 5 life is nothing. If it was 5 mana, or 3 mana even, you could maybe reliably untap with this. But as it stands, this is a really strong card. I feel like it's going to get the usual treatment of in casual. It's not going to be as much of a threat. It's going to eat a Soul Shatter every day of the week. And in competitive, it's I'm just going to play every Force of Will. And then this kind of blends in with all the other, I got Force of Will and I got Storm. Okay, that's cool. I don't think Prismari is as good as it looks maybe, but there's no denying if you untap with it, you probably win.
Yeah, you can turbo this out with a bunch of rituals or mana rocks or something like that, and then maybe that will feed in later, but you got to be able to protect it. Maybe you have to put in some of those free counter spells or be able to phase it out or something, because if it doesn't make it to your next turn, you have to pay 9 mana. That's a lot.
That's just not happening. I like your point about rituals. Maybe the move is kind of like how I play my Brutaclad deck. Brutaclad's the last thing you see. It's the last spell I play in the game. I already set up before it. Maybe if you get the Storm turn going, or you're flashing back a lot of spells like Past in Flames, and you're ritualing, then you go Prismari, and the next spell you cast is there's 7 of them.
Yeah,
that could be the way to go. This is a scary commander for sure. I don't want to downplay that. Number 14, we have Zimone, Infinite Analyst from the Precon, 2 blue-green for a 0/4. Did you know that this is the 6th Zimone that we've gotten?
That is crazy, but she was also in Duskmourn, so that makes sense.
She's all over. The first spell you cast with X and its mana cost costs 1 less to cast for each +1 counter on Zimone. And whenever you cast your first spell with X and its mana cost, each turn put 2 +1/+1 counters on Zimone. This is a when we looked at the precon, we kind of got an idea for what the skeleton of this deck would look like. It's really strong and it goes super big. And the win cons, the big mana stuff, there's like 20 X spells you're probably going to play in this deck, maybe more. They scale with the game. So as big as she gets, that's as big as you can go. And there's a high potential for you to just go over the top. But Zimone is going to be the bottleneck. You're going to have to keep her alive.
Yeah, it feeds into itself, which is so nice. You cast the X spell, you get the mana. If you get the mana, you have the X spell, which is awesome. But that early game might be a little bit rough because you need X spells that don't just do nothing when they exist, which is going to be a little bit tough because so many of those rely on you having so much mana.
I think where this deck gets really scary, you separate the good Zimone decks from the bad Zimone decks. The good ones are going to be firing off things like Tyvar's Stand, March of Swirling Mist, Occult Epiphany, cards you can cast for 0 if you really want to, just to get 2 counters on Zimone, because you can do this once per turn, so 4 times in a turn cycle. Then untap, slam Animist Awakening or some Genesis Wave and just rip people to shreds. Maybe Genesis Wave is bad in this deck, but you get the idea of what I'm saying. And I think also Tyvar's Stand and March of Swirling Mist serve as ways to protect her. If you want to go alongside Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, these are the type of decks where I definitely advocate for those like boots equipments.
Yeah, I'd be pretty scared of Zimone if I saw it across the table. It just depends on how many of those X spells you're playing and how many times you can trigger her in a turn cycle. The next card that we have is number 13. It's Arnin, Deathbloom Botanist. 2 and a black for a 2/2 with Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with power or toughness 1 or less dies, target opponent loses 2 and you gain 2. This is just a little bit of like, all right, we'll kill by 1,000 cuts. And it is substantial in the long run, but 2 and a black might not be the most powerful commander coming down.
Look, I don't have a lot to say about this because it's just very by the numbers, aristocrats. I think this is an okay shell. It does gain you a lot of life, so, you know, if you have a deck that cares more about gaining 2 than having each opponent lose 1. It's also a better commander if you just, like, if you're not playing nice and you just want to snipe whoever's winning, take them out, and you want to take out people one at a time. This is a better commander for that than something that's just like, oh, you know, each opponent loses 1. It's better for taking people out, but it's not better for, like, going critical mass. You're going to need more creatures, I think, to kill the table than you would if your commander was something like Ellis Ilkor. However, this card is really, really good with Forsaken Miner. It is almost a fireball combo with this in your command zone.
Yeah, that's so sick. I think that being able to target people is nice too, because even though it is nice to get that all-around damage, it's better than like Campbell, for instance, where they have the choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and sometimes simple commanders are just good. Number 12, Quintorius History Chaser is 2 red, white for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you get a 3/2 red and white spirit. That is the static ability. +1, you can discard to draw 2 and mill. And then -4, spirits you control gain double strike and vigilance until end of turn. That, to me, feels a little underwhelming, but we're going to use him as just a spirit factory. We are going to be pumping out 3/2s because of this core package of the deck, which I believe is something along the lines of Relic of Progenitus, Lion Sash, the Ooze you can play for sure, and then Agatha's Soul Cauldron, just taking things out of your own graveyard as long as you're milling and discarding.
A card that is awesome in here is On Wings of Gold, because all of your tokens will get flying. And my bone to pick with the set is that the spirits don't have flying. I know yours is the pest thing, but why don't the spirits have flying? I feel like that's pretty standard spirit, you know, text.
Well, the 3/2s didn't have flying last time, at least. At least they kept it consistent.
I guess, unlike the pests.
Unlike the pests, which for no... Oh, man, I won't go off on that. But just make sure you can protect Quintorius. He does have a really cool static, kind of an army in a can. The Precon had even like Moonshaker Cavalry. I don't think you need to go Spirit Kindred with this. I would basically ignore that if I was trying to make a good Quintorius deck. Maybe you play like 1 or 2 if there's really good lords that have abilities that you care about, but I'm more on the On Wings of Gold side. That's the fun, cool, unique part of this.
I think so too. I think that you're going to be able to punch really hard with this and get card advantage, and that's kind of hard to come by in Boros sometimes. All right, we're almost at our top 10. Number 11 is Muddle, the ever-changing 2 blue-red for a 3/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it becomes a copy of one target non-legendary creature you control until end of turn, except it has Myriad. I think that's pretty fun because you're able to fire off all of these really cheap instants and sorceries in your deck. You're able to spend more of that mana on the spicier creatures that you have and then make a ton of them too. That's fun.
Yeah, kind of doing a clone. It almost feels like Saynar, where like you can do Secret Commander, some other creature. There's some really funny ones. Curiosity Crafter is cool because it makes tokens, and then you have 3 Curiosity Crafters, assuming Muddle becomes a copy of it. So when each Curiosity Crafter hits, you'll have 2 tokens, but they'll each draw you 3 cards.
Ooh.
And that's kind of cool. I like that. The only thing to note is that once you have Muddle become something, you can't have it become something else because it loses the ability to become something. So you got to pick one thing, then follow through your turn as that thing.
Yeah, maybe you have to go Flicker with this too, so it's actually able to keep that.
Even then, though, when you flicker it, it can't attack. So you're like, you know, just play counter spells and protect them. Terror of the Peaks, very funny. You turn it into Terror, which means you have 2 terrors, and then you attack and you have 4 terrors, but the 2 terrors that enter are going to be seen by 3 terrors each.
Oh, that's spicy.
And my absolute favorite that I saw, Starwinder. It's a 7/7. You can warp it in, then have Muddle become a copy of it, hit. You now have 4 Starwinders. Starwinder says whenever a creature you control hits a player, you draw that many cards. So you basically deck yourself. I don't know if you have like a Laboratory Man win con with this, but 7 times 4 times 3 is how many cards you're going to draw.
I think you need to choose your secret commander very carefully in this, because the Terror of the Peaks deck looks very different than the Starwinder deck.
Starwinder deck says draw 70 and try not to die. But speaking of trying not to die, Dragon Shields will keep your cards from dying. They will not putter out, get dirty, have those, those weird little specks of dirt sometimes if you keep cards out. It just kind of comes around from the air, and Dragon Shield will keep you protected. They will absorb the tiny little dirt specks that everyone dislikes for you and keep your collection safe.
Dragon Shield will let you put any photo within reason onto sleeves. We have done that a bunch of times ourselves, and you can do it too. If you use the code NERDS, you can save 5% of all of your entire purchase on your entire order. There we go. Those are words. Use our link. Use the code NERDS.
Save your money. We're in our top 10. Let's have some fun. Rutha, Mastering the Moment, is next. 2 blue-red for a 3/4 at the beginning of combat on your turn. If you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, create an XX blue and red elemental creature token with flying and haste, where X is the greatest mana value among instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. I love this aggressive take. It's not even really Spellslinger. This doesn't feel quite like that. You don't need to cast 10 spells. You just need to cast 1 spell that costs 10.
Yeah,
you get a big thing.
I do like this because unlike the other ones, the Opus in this set, you don't have to spend all of that mana to actually get the ability. It just says greatest mana value, so if you have something like a Treasure Cruise and you're able to reduce it, you're still able to get that gigantic creature off of Rutha.
Yeah, and then you can go the extra mile of like what really breaks this. Extra turns and extra combats, or maybe even the more fun version. If you play full throttle, you're going to get a 6/6 when you go to combat, but Rutha triggers on combat. So when you hit with your 6/6, you'll go to your next combat. Rutha gives you another 6/6. You hit with both, go to your third combat, get a third 6/6. They're all untapping, and you're just connecting for billions and billions of damage. So I really like this aggro take. The tokens stay around. They don't say get sacrificed like you might think. Rutha just kind of beats people up, and even if you cast her, you get a big spell out of it, a Volcanic Salvo or something. It's not unreasonable to say that's the same turn. Even if she dies, you get to keep your token.
Yeah, I like this. I think that unlike some of the other ones that we've seen in the set prior, this is a good take on it. This feels right in terms of like combat versus spell slinging.
This and Muddle feel pretty fresh.
Number 9 is one that I'm going to be playing in the 99, but it's still a good commander. It's Mocio, Vane's New Dean, 2 and a black for a 2/1 with flying. Whenever it enters, create a 1/1 black and green pest token with the line that BZ hates, obviously.
Whenever it attacks and doesn't die, you gain 1.
At the beginning of your end step, if you've gained life this turn, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. I think this is awesome. I like the mono black life gain, but I'm going to be playing this in the 99 of Baitor.
Yeah, there was a couple like versions of this that were more expensive, and they gave us stats that we don't care about, like, oh man, a 6 mana 4/4 flyer that does this, or a 5 mana 3/4. Like, what about just like a 3 mana 2/1? Remove all the stats. Just give me that. When I gain life, I get to reanimate something. This could basically just be a version of like mono black Marin. That same sort of play pattern where you're getting something back every single turn. You gain life. You can either go the Aristocrats way, or you can just go for like big bursts. Like, hey, do you like Grey Merchant of Asphodel? What about 2 Grey Merchant of Asphodels and just play that deck?
What if you put in Bolas' Citadel in here because you have a lot of life? Who knows?
Look, we're starting to get spicy. It's a mono black life gain. All the usual suspects are in here, but this seems like a solid little guy. Comes down early. The pest is cool, I guess. At least helps make sure that you always gain some amount of life.
Yeah, and maybe you can put more of those in if you want, but if you don't want to keep your...
If you don't want to differentiate between pests that attack and gain 1 and die and gain 1.
Yeah, that might be a little tough. You have to write those down.
That's going to break my brain. Oh, man. Just let them all be the same. Jumping over to another Golgari, it's number 8, Dina, Essence Brewer. 1 black-green for a 2/3. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, and you can pay 2, tap, and sacrifice another creature to gain X and put X counters on target creature, where X is a sacrifice creature's power. But I don't really factor in that last mode. That feels like it's nice to have as a sack outlet if I don't already have one, but if I just get the Carrion Feeders and the Viscera Seers, I want to play things like Ophiomancer, Pest Rescuer, Tender Shoot Dryad, and just make a token every turn, and then pop it every turn, and Dina will say, hey, draw 4 extra cards for no mana.
It is just such a nice, continuous sack outlet that's never going to die because she's not that threatening. She's going to come down early, and you're going to be getting a ton of cards out of it to actually just find your win con in your deck.
Yeah, and it's kind of valid to go for maybe making 1 gigantic creature, and then you send in your little dummies, that your fodder, your blood gas. And since this ability is not restricted to sorcery speed, no matter what gets through, you can sack your 10/10, throw it all on the unblocked thing, and then your opponents are taking like extra damage because of it. That's where I think that ability comes in. It's cool to have as a nice little extra bonus that makes the card just that much more powerful.
Number 7 is one that is a big splashy Izzet commander. It's Define the Tempests. 5 blue-red for a 5/7. Once during each of your turns, you can cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. I like this because it comes down and you will still have the mana, because it's free, to be able to cast that big splashy spell that you're holding after you cast them.
Yeah, I don't know how much this commander is going to be built, but if we're just talking about the strongest commanders in the set, this is your resident extra turn spell deck. You're going to play Time Stretch after you play Zephi. Is it fun? Not necessarily. I think a lot of people would agree that it's not very fun, but it's definitely strong. I mean, this is one of the better chaining extra turn spells commanders that I have seen. So you're going to play Zephi, extra turn spell, and then when you go to untap, you can draw, try to find the next one and just keep it going.
I mean, it's fun if you want to just be casting big spells if they're not extra turns, and then if they are extra turns, you can bump this up to like maybe a bracket 4 if you can ramp Zephi out very fast. I think that it has homes in both, but as you mentioned, it definitely gets a lot worse if you are playing at the lower brackets.
Yeah, it's surprising how many commanders in this set incentivize me to directly reference Rise of the Eldrazi, the sorcery, because that's also like going to be in this deck. It doesn't care that you need triple, quadruple million colorless pips. We're casting it for free. Number 6, we got Gorma the Gullet. This might seem surprisingly high, but let's give it a read. It's a 1/1 lifelink for 1 black-green. Whenever another creature you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Gorma, and non-token creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter for each creature that died under your control this turn. That seems interesting. You know, you're going to make a big, giant life-linking Gorma, but if we're trying to talk about how powerful that is, what if it just said creatures you control enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on them? Uh-oh. It combos with every persist card now, and there's just a bunch of extra text on it.
Oh no, the persist. We broke persist yet again. This is going to be very, very big, and I feel like people are going to accidentally have those persist combos in their deck without even realizing it.
Yeah, if I see Gorma from across the table, I'm sorry, I'm going to kill it every single chance I get, unless you specifically go out of your way to tell me that, no, in fact, you have no persist. Because as long as you're playing this green-black toolbox kind of deck, you can find one in a moment's notice very easily. All you got to do is start sacrificing. But even if you don't have a quote-unquote payoff like a Blood Artist, Gorma gets infinitely large when you sack infinite persist creatures. So you attack, maybe kill somebody, maybe not, but you gain infinite life, and that's hard for a lot of decks to come back from already, even if you don't have a real payoff.
Yeah, I think you need to decide what bracket you want this to be in, because you could go the infinite life route, and then people have something to deal with when they have like the win the game on the spot type deals,
right.
Or you can go, you know, a little bit more punchy and keep all those persist creatures out of your deck.
I mean, even if you're just, like, we could just put that aside. That's a very powerful aspect of the card. But even if you're just sacrificing, like, your Bloodghast and your Nether Traders, and you're doing your Pitiless Plunderer thing and your Gravecrawler thing, first of all, there's more combos with those cards that I mentioned together, but even if you're not doing that, you could still get this thing up to like a 10/10 and start beating face.
Now, we're on to the number 5, the top 5 of the set. This one is Lorehold the Historian. Very, very well anticipated. 3 red, white for a 5/5. Flying haste. Each instant and sorcery spell in your hand has Miracle 2. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you can discard a card. If you do, you draw a card. Miracle, if you were wondering, is you may cast a card for its miracle cost when you draw it if it's the first card you drew this turn. That is a lot to keep track of, but this is a cool card.
This card asks very little of you to start blowing people's faces off. I do like also that it has haste randomly, so you're just clocking people for 5 as soon as this thing comes down. That is funny, but a lot of the setup that makes miracle cards go off is Scroll Rack, Sensei's Divining Top. Those two sort of like engine-y cards. There's others too that I'll get to in a sec, but those cards are really good with Miracle, but why we see Miracle decks not being that good is the Miracle cards themselves. Wizards knows, and has always known, that Miracle is like, can be busted, so they've balanced it all. But when you just give Miracle 2 to whatever is in your deck, as long as you do the work and you put things like Call Forth the Tempest, Rise of the Eldrazi coming up once again, big, giant, ridiculous spells, you can use things like those other engines to just cast them over and over and over. And I think the best one is probably Library of Lang, because it says, instead of discarding, you can put the spell on top of your deck.
That's crazy. This is perfect for this deck.
You just literally just start casting any spell in your hand for 2 mana.
Yeah, that is going to be hard to beat, especially if you can tutor to find some of the best ones. This is going to be a spicy commander.
I think one cool thing to go with this from the new set is Restoration Seminar and Improvisational Capstone, the Paradigm spells.
Ooh.
You're casting them for 2. You're just going to start getting them every single time. This looks like a really strong deck. You got to keep Lorehold off the field. It is one of those decks that has a balance to it, because if you kill Lorehold, like, you got to pay 7 for it. You get to do your busted miracle stuff sometimes, but if I shoot this thing down, like I'll see you in 5 turns when you set up your engine again.
Yeah, but at least you're able to, and you're in white, so you're able to have the, this becomes hexproof, or,
Sure.
maybe you could phase some stuff out. There are ways to protect it because you're in the colors to do so.
Right, and like we said, the engine requires so little mana. You just need to play Lorehold and then have your 1 or 2 mana artifact out. Then you can just start miracling everything, that you can work in some extra mana for protecting it. Unlike Prismari, where it's like, where am I supposed to find the extra mana to, counterspell your thing?
You better have free ones.
Right, when I've got this 7 mana thing and I'm trying to storm off. Like, it's pretty tough. Climbing on up to number 4. This card just has combo broken stuff written all over it. It's Berta, Wise Extrapolator, 2 blue-green for a 1/1 with increment. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana you spent is greater than this creature's power or toughness, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Berta, add 1 mana of any color. Ooh. And you can pay X and tap it for some reason to make a 0/0 green and blue fractal and put X +1/+1 counters on it. That doesn't really have anything to do with the rest of the card, but it does mean that you automatically have a 2-card combo with Intruder Alarm. Not that we needed to break Intruder Alarm, but I'm telling you the strongest thing you can do with this is tap her to make a 0/0, which will untap her, which will give you infinite enters and death triggers. But I'm kind of more interested in the putting counters on part.
Yeah, I think that getting all that mana would make her very powerful, even if she didn't just have a built-in combo on her. Why are all of these commanders have built-in combos onto them?
This is the combo set. I think when you start dealing in instants and sorceries and cheating them, you just start to get like really powerful things, which makes me interested to build so many commanders from this set. They're all like, they're going to be competing for my attention as to what build looks the coolest.
This is going to go very well with Evolution Sage and Inexorable Tide. We want to put a ton of counters on here so we can storm off and cast a lot more spells because we're putting so many counters on her, making so much mana, and then doing so many more things. I mean, Simic loves to draw cards and Dural to begin with, so once we have that mana outlet and we have all the cards in our hand, we can just win.
Yeah, we can afford to spend our first few turns setting up and playing those pieces that you mentioned to then play Berta later. And then now it's like, well, whenever I cast a spell or play a land, I add a mana, including whatever else I'm about to do. Whenever I proliferate, I just keep doing that. And it lets you take really long turns. I can't think of too many like +1/+1 counter-y infinite combos with Berta, but you can get into engine territory where you take stormy turns. And then if you feel like trying to spike it, throw an Intruder Alarm, and then you got a weird Splinter Twin in your deck.
I mean, with counters to begin with, you just have a lot of beats too. So if you have ways to give it evasion, or you're making a big board and you're able to put a ton of counters on your team, then you're just able to win because you could just punch people in the face.
Yeah, and friendly reminder before we get to our top 3, you can buy all these cards on Card Kingdom. So if something is piquing your interest, head over to Card Kingdom. It would support the channel. Use the link in our description.
Number 3 is a very spicy Boros card that I want to check out. It's Aziza, Mage Tower Captain, red-white for a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you can tap 3 untapped creatures you control. If you do, you copy it and choose new targets for the copy. I think this is going to get so spicy. There are so many ways to make a ton of guys in this Boros color pie that you're able to just copy those over and over and then copy those spells that you're making more of.
This feels like an exponential graph where you're going to play some token thing on turn 2, Aziza on turn 3, and then your board state's going to start going 3, 8, 16, 24, 509, and you're going to blow everybody away. I think there's things like Call the Coppercoats and Will of the Mardu, 2 of the better ones, where if you need a board state, they generate an army in a can, so you fire them off on the end step and then play Aziza on your next turn, ready to go with a bunch of copiers in play. Or if you've already got the copiers, copy and Call the Coppercoats. It's like you're just going to make 50 million creatures.
There's so many ways to do damage on ETB, like Perforos and Impact Tremors too. It's just so easy. And I think the spicy thing about Aziza is that it counts itself. So if you do Dragon Fodder turn 2, Aziza turn 3, and then you have, one just a little spell that you can copy, you have all the creatures you need to copy that 1 mana spell multiple times.
Even something as silly as that start that you mentioned with your 1 extra mana, like Path to Exile, copying and hitting your 2 tokens, like that's kind of cool. That sets you up for next turn. This commander is really cheap, so it comes down really fast. I feel like there's so much to explore with the tapping part of it, where like I could convoke, or I want to untap my creatures to keep going. It makes me think like maybe there's some kind of like 4-card combo you can go. The fact that this thing just looks like a really deep, fun commander. Like, yeah, you're going wide with tokens and Impact Tremorsing, but this feels like a really cool take on that. I'm happy to try it. Number 2, it's a dragon. We have Silverquill, the Disputant. 2 white-black for a 4/4 flying vigilance. Each instant and sorcery spell you cast has casualty 1, which in this deck just says copy all instant and sorcery spells you cast, and the amount of extra mana you pay is 0.
Yes, I think that it is so easy in Orzhov to be making these tokens. You have to build your deck right because, as we mentioned in the other video, that it can't just be slammed into any Orzhov deck.
Right.
But if you have the creatures and then very powerful spells or spells that can chain into other spells, being able to copy those both means your deck is so much more explosive than the other decks at the table.
Yeah, I think this deck actually is super interested in rituals. I want Dark Ritual and Culling the Weak and that level of thing, because now that insulates me a little bit if Silverquill dies because he's such a heavy target. But if Silverquill's out, I'm Dark Ritualing for 6 mana. I'm Culling the Weak for like 8 mana. And you just keep going and maybe going like big mana plays. I want to throw in some spells that are worth copying, obviously. So if you tap out for Silverquill, you want to fire off a Flare of Malice. Boom, 2 Flare of Malices. That's disgusting. But if you get those rituals going, we can start copying Breach the Multiverse, your all-time favorite card.
I love that card. There's also Living Death because you want to put stuff into the graveyard to begin with. Why not just get it all back?
It's so funny. As long as you have enough creatures, right? Like, not every Silverquill deck is going to be a Living Death deck, but it's so funny to cast Living Death, sack whatever, copy it, and end up with the exact same board state you started with, but you get to profit all the death triggers and all the ETB stuff. That is hilarious to me. And also, there's a weird one. Saw in Half is going to see a lot of play in this deck, and I just want to point out that while Saw in Half is pretty cool, it's nice to get 2 Saw in Halves. If you have only one creature that you want to Saw in Half, you can't target it with both Saw in Halves, or else you will only get one resolving Saw in Half. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When you copy it with Casualty, you need to first declare your targets. You assume, like, the thing that people would want to do is, I'll target my same creature twice to get 4 tokens that are copies of it. But the first one destroys it, so that fizzles the second copy. So just have 2 separate targets for your Saw in Half, long story short.
But our number 1 commander, we are here, and you probably expected it because it's such a good card. It is Witherbloom the Balancer, 6 black-green for a 5/5 with affinity for creatures, which means you will never be paying that 8 mana. Flying Death Touch, instants and sorcery spells you cast have affinity for creatures. All of your stuff is going to be way cheaper depending on how many creatures you have. It is so easy to make these pests, to make these tokens, to just flood your board early so you can get this down as early as turn 3-4 if you have the right setup for it, and then just storm off with all of your big mana spells.
Yeah, we really don't throw around the word broken too much when describing individual cards on this channel, but this has got to be the closest one I've seen to feeling like, man, this commander is ridiculous. We're not going to call it broken yet. We'll play with it first. But this is one of the strongest commanders we've seen in a long time. We'll get this out of the way because it's one of the least interesting things. But you can infinite combo with Sprout Swarm as long as you have enough creatures, because buyback counts towards affinity. So if you basically tap 1 Saproling to make a Saproling that you can then tap to make a Saproling, that's infinite stuff. And that's going to be in almost every Witherbloom deck because it's like a $4 card now. You just put it's perfect in the deck, and now you just have an infinite outlet that you can fire off to make infinite tokens on end step, which is already scary.
There's so many big mana spells to be able to play with this. Finale of Devastation is going to make your thing so gigantic.
That one's ridiculous.
Torment to Hailfire? I feel like that's a staple in so many high power black decks to begin with, but being able to do it for double the mana that you actually have just because you have a bunch of creatures on the board. Biorhythm newly unbanned. You're going to have the creatures they want. That's crazy.
Like, this deck seems so strong to me that I don't even know how good 2 mana Biorhythm is. That's kind of where we're at. And I'm being serious because I might rather just play Finale of Devastation and give my creatures +X+X. It's literally Crater of Behemoth.
Yeah.
+X+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. And then you go find another creature on top of that and put it in play. Maybe that is Crater of also because it doesn't give trample. But like, these spells are just game over. And there's so many tutors you can play in this deck that aren't necessarily even like $50 because you can play the crappy 5 mana tutor because it's 1 mana tutor if you have enough creatures. The only trap I think people are going to fall into when building Witherbloom, that is avoidable, by the way, is putting too much crap in their deck that costs 8 or 1,000 or 55x spells and missing that part of the game where you have to actually set up, where you need your Saproling migrations, maybe like your little Scoot Swarms, things that actually make creatures, things that can make creatures even when you're behind, things that can recover your board state so that you're not just having, that X3 black crappy tutor spell in your hand. Like, you can play it, eat your vegetables, and this deck will be almost unstoppable. I don't know how you're supposed to stop Witherbloom. It'll just keep coming down.
Get your Field of the Deads in there, get your Tendershoot Dryads in there, and I think that it's going to be so hard to interact with this deck.
Yeah, because you want to take Witherbloom off the field, but like what this deck really needs to do is you need to board wave them like every turn. And that is never, like, I know the commanders that are out already.
Yeah.
Where the answer is, I don't know, I guess board wipe them every turn. And those commanders are really hard to stop because that's not an easy ask.
Witherbloom is so good, and I'm excited to see what this deck ends up shaking out.
This deck looks nuts. It feels like you can't really build a bracket 2 Witherbloom because it's gonna be very consistent almost no matter what you do with it. If you're looking for more nitpicking nerds, you want to see what we think of the precons, the face commanders, and the upgrades for them, that's this video right here. Better go watch it.